You're listening to the Seahawks Insiders.
Geno looks, going to lay it up over the top. Got a man out there. It is locking. He has got it. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Getting you ready for Seahawks football every Sunday.
Hurts drops back, has time, loads up, throws. A.J. Brown, the defense. It's intercepted. Does he keep his feet in? He does. Seahawks ball.
Presented by Delta, the official airline of the Seahawks. Now, here's your host, Jen Mueller.
And we are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. John Boyle, it is good to be back this week.
It is. We missed everyone last week thanks to the power outage. No podcast, but great to be back. And you know what else is great to be? In first place.
Yes. It is really good to be in first place. It's really kind of funny how quickly things have turned around. And you knew that was a possibility when you've got the closest division in football as your division. But it is shocking the turnaround that we have seen, not just in the standings, but I think in the team in general.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you just look at, going into the bye, you've lost 5 of 6. There's some real questions about the defense. Granted, the Rams game before the bye looked like the defense was starting to turn things around, but all of a sudden, you go beat 2 division rivals, and the defense just looks phenomenal in both those games. And this season feels a heck of a lot different than it did a couple weeks ago.
The sidelines feel different.
Yeah,
it was the most energetic I have seen the defense this entire season. Mm-hmm. And I will say the 12s were really loud on Sunday, and that absolutely contributed. But there was just this energy that was emanating from the defense. Like, it's kind of old school days, which is fitting because Jaron Reed was talking about it last week, how he was bringing back kind of that LOB style of practice. And I think that showed up. I'm sure part of that was the opening series where you get 2 sacks on back-to-back plays. But, man, even in warm-ups, even when they came out onto the field, that is a different feel for this team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it starts back really before the bye. Like, this defense, as you referenced, they had some meetings, and Jaron Reed talked about kind of getting that LOB level of energy. And, look, he was first to say, hey, we're not trying to be that defense. Right. It's not going to be the same. It's not the same players. But just that passion, that intensity, the focus on practice, all of that stuff.
The accountability.
Yeah.
The accountability of practice, right? And having guys in meeting rooms call each other out. Mm-hmm. I mean, the coaches, sure, the coaches are going to point things out, but there is an accountability with the players and the leadership group who got together and said, we can do better and we need to do better. Mm-hmm. And it's showing up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's night and day, especially the run defense. Like, you look at what they're doing against the run compared to what we were seeing in that midseason stretch where everybody was rushing for 150 plus against Seahawks. Like, that just makes all the difference in the world for this defense.
It was 49 rushing yards allowed last week to the Cardinals. That is a Cardinals team that had rushed for over 140 in 6 games. Mm-hmm. They had compiled over 300 yards of rushing offense in the 2 games prior to facing Seattle. And Arizona was coming off a bye, so everything should have been more to their favor. But, I mean, from the first snap of the game, it was clearly tilted towards Seattle.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
It's fun to see.
It's also fun to see that LOB style and old school Seahawks football coming back in another way. Kobe Bryant in his celebration.
Yes.
On the pick 6.
A little homage to Marshawn Lynch. And, it's funny. He's already where he's probably going to get fined for it.
Right.
Shouting out Marshawn, maybe see if he wants to help out. But it's funny that he was, he talked to his family about it. He kind of planned it if he ever got the shot to do it. And he took advantage. It was good for him, and he is your NFC Defensive Player of the Week for that 69-yard pick 6. So good for Kobe. I mean, he's such a cool story this year of a guy that loses his starting job last year, deals with injuries, and starts this year as a backup, and now he's a starter and a real key part of this defense.
I was talking to him earlier this year, and he said it really is a blessing in disguise. Not the losing the job and not maybe the ups and downs, but he's also played 3 different positions since he's been here. And he said, when it first happened, it was hard, right? Because you're trying to learn all these things. He goes, actually, that helped me learn this defense because I had a different process for studying so I could dive in. I also have had to communicate across the board to various teammates depending on where I've been on the field. And it was like all of that, not that it makes it easy this year, but it was like this is truly the blessing in disguise of having to go through what I've been through the last couple of years.
We've seen that with a couple other defensive backs who he's told us he's leaned on through this process. With Quandre Diggs, he's a guy that was a nickel and a cornerback early in his career before becoming a full-time safety. Deshaun Shedd, who helped coach Kobe Bryant when he was here, played everywhere in the secondary during his playing days. So he's had some guys to help him get to this point, and he has taken full advantage of that opportunity.
I think he still corresponds with Shedd.
He did.
I think
he told
they
us
still
that
text.
Shedd looks at his tape and sends him notes, and then he and Quandre are really close. Like they text all the time. Just he'll talk a little trash to Quandre for things and text him about that. So it's both those guys are still very much in his life.
Well, the Seahawks defense looked really impressive on Sunday, but there are still some things that they need to improve on. I think that we're willing to let those slide, but Mike Macdonald is not, as he explains what he saw on film.
Explosive-wise in the past, there's still some there. I think we left some meat on the bone on some situational stuff. But just this, again, like you go out there with the approach, the attitude, the intent, the communication, the urgency, how we played the run, can still apply some of the calls and like the spirit of the calls and what we're doing. I mean, there's significant room for improvement as much as you feel like, hey, we played a really good game, which we did. But you're leaving the game and, hey, we're still hungry to improve as well.
Unless he's talking to you after a shutout win in the Super Bowl, he's probably going to tell you, we're still chasing it. We're still getting better. And that's a great attitude to have because the day you think, oh, we just held the Cardinals to 2 field goals, we figured it out, that's when somebody comes up and gets you the next week. So, they've been really incrementally getting better these last 3 games, and they feel like they're not there yet. He's talked about they can still turn the ball over more. There's things they can do to get better. So, as good as it's been, let's just keep building on it. And as Mike would say, keep stacking.
Yeah, and the number one thing when he was asked a week ago what he wants to see from his defense, it was more takeaways. You get one from Kobe Bryant on Sunday.
Almost
Julian Love, oh my gosh, the closing speed.
Awesome.
There was a couple ones.
Well, I was going to say, if Leonard hits the arm, if he hits Kyler's arm a split second sooner, there's another one as well. But the play Julian made,
that was incredible.
It's funny. In the moment, I was like, man, that was almost Earl Thomas-esque. I'm like, I can't say that. You can't. And then Mina Kimes from ESPN, she tweets, I'm like, okay, well, if Mina's going to agree, I'll go with it. Because he covered so much ground, just came flying in there. And he even caught it, but just couldn't quite get in bounds.
It was really fun to watch. And I know that Coach is probably looking at a lot of those plays from Trey McBride, right? The tight ends that had, all the yards and all the offense. In talking to those guys after the game, look, there's going to be some give and take.
Yeah.
If you allow fewer than 50 rushing yards, they're going to move the ball somehow. But you could tell when Seattle went on that 8-minute drive to essentially close things out, if you can't run the ball, you're not going to be able to stay on the field. So I understand what Mike is saying about the explosives. You would like to limit those. And also that was kind of the trade-off in that game is how I would look at it.
And even the explosives, we're not talking 40, 50 yards, bombing over you. He was getting between layers of coverage and getting 15, 20 yards, which you don't want. But Mike McDonald's not going to say this, but I can live with Trey McBride doing that to you if you're not getting run on at all. And if the receivers aren't killing you. I mean, if that's pretty much all.
Against a top-tier running back.
Exactly.
Right? It wasn't the backup or the backup to the backup.
Yeah. James Conner's a heck of a back.
That
was his fewest yards since his rookie season when he was barely getting carries.
Ooh, good note.
Yeah.
Way to do some deep diving
8 yards
on
7 carries.
Wow.
Yeah, they shut that down.
There you go. And it is why I think that there should be a lot of confidence for this defense, not just for the one game, but to stack them back-to-back against division opponents and teams that had been playing really well coming into the matchups against Seattle. And, in fact, Coach does see a place where confidence can grow.
We're confident in our process, and you have to go through all the steps to have confidence stepping out there on Sunday. So you can't skip steps. You can't go around stuff. You got to go through it, and the guys know that. We've been doing it the whole time, but trying to get better at our process. Look, we're always going to have the mentality of, how do you find an edge here? How do you find an edge there, process-wise? but I think it's coming into focus on what it takes to play at a high level.
We are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. I know that Mike McDonald talks about process a lot, and I think that is, I think sometimes it sounds boring.
Mm-hmm.
It is so cool to see it work.
Yeah.
Because they've had a good process. They have talked about it the entire time. The scouts have talked about it. The GM has talked about it, right? Everybody in the building has talked about the process. It's really hard to stick with that process when you don't see the results. They have, the results are coming. I think that's maybe the best part of these last 2 wins.
Yeah, and this is before they won these past 2 games when it's, it's a lot easier to talk about the process when it's going well, but coming out of the bye before these 2 wins, one of the things he talked about is that process of like, how do we get from Monday, what we do Monday through Saturday, of how we teach it, how we coach it, how the players do it on the practice field, and build that, I think he called it an assembly line, to the final product, which is what you do on the field Sunday. And man, it's been really good.
And he's taken player input on that one. He's taken coaches' input on that one. I mean, he had an idea of what he wanted to do when he came in here,
but he
has shown that he has a growth mindset and that he is willing to take feedback and to make changes.
Yeah, which is great for a first-time head coach, because you can have everything in your head of how it should be, and you can be, okay, maybe this is how we did it the last place I was, but in a first time doing it, you got to have a little flexibility. And he's done that. He's listened to players. He's tweaked their schedule is a little different than it was going into the bye. They've tweaked a few things here and there. So I like that he's, he obviously has his core principles he's going to stick to, but he's willing to tweak things around to maximize what they're getting.
And when you talk about the last place he was at, there's some eerily similar comparisons to Baltimore and when their defense started to turn around in Mike's first year as a defensive coordinator, and where Seattle is and where the defense is turning around. And so you start to go, oh, is this kind of what you expect? No, it is not at all the same, which was a little bit surprising to me.
I think the learning curve in Baltimore was very much my responsibility of having, I didn't have a clear enough vision of what we were trying to do early enough. And then when we traded for Roquan, and we decided to play a certain way, it kind of forced our hand. So I realized there's parallels in like when it's happening in the season, but it was just under a little bit different circumstance. I think here we have a vision. We have a very clear vision of what we're trying to achieve, and we're just hammering away at it and trying to make incremental improvements until it's kind of coming to life.
Yeah, it's impossible not to look at the timing of the turnaround and the fact that you went out and acquired a really good middle linebacker in the middle of the season, kind of right as this turnaround has happened. It's really easy to look at that and say, oh, it's the same thing. But as he said, it's a different scenario, obviously different players. And I think he alluded to this on his radio show Monday. A lot of it is just you have a whole new coaching staff. They're all new working together. It's not just that they're new to Seattle and these players. They're new working together. Very few of these guys have ever spent time working together. And so as much as you're not going to come in week 1 and say, oh, boy, there's going to be growing pains. This is all new. Like, it's kind of inevitable, and you can't. It's probably, as he said, it's probably better for the long term to get the right staff, even if it's going to have some of that. But you can't just come in week 1 with all those new guys and just be perfect for 17 weeks. And so I think what we're seeing this turnaround is, yes, getting Ernest Jones really helps. Adding some of the guys they have, making some of the changes they have has really helped. But more than anything, I think it's just you're giving these players and coaches week after week to build together and grow this defense.
And he was asked this week, in hindsight, would he do it differently and hire more coaches that he knows? Now, side note, when you are a young coach in the NFL, your network of coaches is not that large to choose from.
And he was late building the staff because of the timing of their playoff run.
So even in hindsight, there's not a whole lot that you could do differently on that one. And I loved his answer. He said, well, that's the easy way out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easy answer and the easy way out. The thing that you should be doing is putting together the best staff you possibly can, whether I knew them before or not.
Yeah, and maybe you're better in week 4 if you have a staff full of Baltimore guys. But are you better in 2026?
Yeah.
Probably not. And that's his point. It's like he's not trying to win obviously he's trying to win every game, but he's not focused on what's the best thing for the first half of this season. It's what's the best thing for the long-term future of this organization. And he felt like he went out and found the best coaches, regardless of background, to build a staff. And side note, even if you felt like, oh, I should have done it differently, are you going to say that?
No, that is right. I know, but
you're right. I really botched it building this coaching staff. Let's reset and start over in week 12.
Of course he wasn't going to say that.
But I think he made a good point.
Okay. Well, thank you for conceding that one. Either way, Lumen Field was rocking on Sunday. I could hardly hear myself think, which is why you might need some Sony headphones this NFL season. Feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Seattle Seahawks with premium noise cancellation. You're in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you're in your living room or on the go, you will never miss a beat with Sony headphones. We can talk about the Seahawks offense.
Yes.
And we can talk about the Jets, which I can't believe we're this far in. We have not talked about the Jets. I got to be honest, I'm not that intrigued about the Jets. After they decided that they're going to start Aaron Rodgers this week and that he's not going to be cut, and now he's saying that if he plays in 2025, as if this is his decision anymore, he would like to stay in New York. I'm kind of over the whole Jets thing. I got to be honest with you.
There's a bit of drama there. You know,
there's a bit?
A bit. You know, they've fired their coach and GM this season. Their quarterback's in the news all the time. It's interesting. But
well, their quarterback has also lost 7 of their last 8 games and is completing just 63% of his passes during that stretch with 7 interceptions.
Let's make it 8 or 9.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. I say all of that, and you still can't overlook Aaron Rodgers. And they are coming off a bye. So whatever injuries he has had, which there have been a number of them this year, he has an extra week, and he is still one of the greatest quarterbacks I have ever seen.
And their production was better offensively in their last game before the bye, and he said in his podcast appearance he does every week, he said that he was starting to feel better in that Colts game. So, look, we've seen it both for the Seahawks and every other team. Like, in this league, you can't think, oh, well, we have the better record, we're the more talented team, and just assume a win in any week. So it's never easy, and you gotta take every game just as seriously.
Here's what we do know about that offense. They are averaging just under 300 yards of offense, and they are really doing it through the air. I mean, if you look at the numbers, whatever they're getting is coming through the air because they've got just about 87 rushing yards a game. They are one of the few teams that are below Seattle in those rush totals.
I tell you what, though, that run game because of Breece Hall.
Yes,
still gives. He's averaging 5 yards a carry his last 4 games. So the carries aren't there, but
in some ways it's a little bit like Ken Walker because when you look at this, he might not be getting yards on the ground. He is, however, getting explosive plays, and he's getting yards from scrimmage. Yeah. He's got 20 explosive plays on his own. That is tied for 8th most among all running backs. And when you start looking at yards from scrimmage, I mean, you're up there at 80 to 90 a game.
Yeah, because what does he have? 400-some receiving yards on top of the rushing yards. So, again, like he's not putting up the gaudy, like he's not stats where he's among the leaders in anything, but he's still a heck of a back.
He is, and I know you can't take him for granted. Or how about Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson, yes, yards. He's going to be their leading receiver. 47% of his yards come after the catch. You know who else is in that range across the NFL?
I'm going to guess maybe Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Hey, all right.
Jackson is about 45% of his yards come after catch.
Those 45-yard screens help that.
I do like that play call. That's a really good play call on that one.
When this team starts getting screenplays to work, that's something. That's been a long time struggle.
Yes.
It's like.
But it's different when it's an inside screen versus an outside screen. They can't set up the outside screen very well.
I don't care how you get it done. Because it's fascinating. I'm getting off topic, but it's like this was not a single coordinator or quarterback. This goes back to Holmgren era.
Yes.
Like multiple head coaches, coordinators, quarterbacks. It's wild. It's been like a curse of this franchise.
Now, what I will say is every analyst or everybody who's ever played football will tell you if you don't practice it to the same level that you practice everything else, you're not going to have that success. When you have Marshawn, you don't need a big screen game.
I guess that's true.
So
I'm just saying.
I know. I agree. Because I used to cringe, and now I'm like, oh.
When you see it work, you're like, oh, this is fun when you do it to other teams.
This is good. I like this. I tell you what, we're going to dive into the Seahawks offense and the Jets defense in just a second, but right now, let's get a word from our presenting sponsor.
Statistically, the world is losing color. Just consider all-white kitchens, beige baby nurseries, a sea of gray cars. But in the hundreds of destinations Delta flies to, you can rediscover color in the bright blue waters of Hawaii. the emerald green hills of Scotland, the berry pink cherry blossoms of Tokyo, and so much more. Sometimes opening your world is all it takes to open your mind, which is why when you fly Delta, your potential takes off when you do. Delta, official airline of the Seattle Seahawks.
The strength of this Jets team is absolutely their defense. Top 10 defense. Quinnen Williams.
He's good.
An interior defensive lineman with 6 sacks and 36 pressures. That's the second most sacks for an interior D lineman. Also, second most pressures from an interior D lineman.
Yeah. And going back to the conversation of you can't look at a team's record and just say, oh, we've got this. When one of their strengths is an area where, quite frankly, you've probably struggled the most on offense is your interior line, pass rush. That's been an issue at times for the Seahawks, and you're probably missing one of your starting guards with Anthony Bradford with ankle injury. That kind of player right there can change a game quite a bit. So Seahawks are going to need to have a good plan for Quinnen Williams.
Well, and when you talk about being without a guard, apparently there's a little bit of a competition this week in practice, which I thought was a little surprising. Not that they shouldn't look at all options, but Anthony Bradford plays, 5 snaps on Sunday. He lives with an ankle injury. Christian Haynes comes in, and I think maybe first half felt like he was holding his own, maybe a little bit better than the second half. And here is how Mike McDonald kind of evaluates how he performed.
Satawa is someone that we're going to take a long look at as well. So, but Christian played winning football for us. But want him to grow, keep growing, man. You got to go prove it every week on the practice field and in preparation. And but right now, just happy that he deserves all that credit for having a guy that was rotating in. Then AB kind of took over, still prepared, knew all the things that we no mentals on the day, but some technique stuff we got to get cleaned up. But overall, enough good enough to win the game. So happy with this. Ability to step in and help us win the football game.
And I found that particularly interesting because the question was not like, oh, if Anthony Bradford can't play, what's the plan, or is there competition? The question was very pointedly about Christian Haynes getting an opportunity, and he sort of corrected that notion of, well, let's wait. We're going to give Satoa Laumea a chance to give him a look there. So, yeah, I think we're going to see a little competition this week. Who knows, maybe they let both guys play to get some game tape on both of them. But, yeah, I think we all just assume Christian Haynes – he's the guy that was rotating earlier in the season. He's the guy that came in that game, but they want to get a look and make it a competitive situation. So be a fun week to see how that plays out.
And I think it's going to be way different. It's hard to come in a game 5 snaps in when you weren't expecting to play. I'm not saying that they're not ready or that they haven't prepared. It's just a different level.
Well, and just the reps you're getting.
Yeah, you're not getting first team reps if you know that Anthony Bradford is starting. They get a couple, but it's not. It is not like having a full week of this. So I think that makes a difference. I talked to Abe Lucas after last week's game. He was like, "Yeah, I played all of the snaps on offense." He was like, "Yeah, I've got some stuff I need to correct on that one." But you get him back for a second game at essentially full strength. That helps the guy alongside of him, and maybe this is the week that run game breaks out, John. Because for as good as this Jets team is, did you see how many rushing yards they're allowing per game?
I did not, but I have
about
it right
130.
Here. I'll go with that.
About 130. So maybe this is the breakout game we get from Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I know the numbers haven't been there, but that doesn't mean it's not working according to Coach.
You're looking through it from, how we're coming up with our plan, how we're implementing it, how we're practicing it, how it's coming to life on the field. There's some good stuff out there. It's just not as much as we want it or as consistent as we want it, but there's some good stuff, and our guys are working really hard at it. Our coaches are devising some really good plans, in my opinion, that we're going to still try to improve on, but we're on the right track.
And the thing that I really like, look, the yards haven't been there, that it hasn't been as productive as they need it to be, but they're not giving up on it at this point of the season. There was that stretch early in the year where whether it was just game plan or you're playing from behind where they just weren't running the ball. Whereas you look at Kenneth Walker the last 3 games, 16 carries last week, 14 the week before, 25 against the Rams. So it's they're making a real effort to get it done, and I think that's how you've got to commit to it a little bit to get it going, and you don't want to live with all the negative plays and the short yardage runs, but I do feel like if they keep hammering at it, there's going to be an opportunity for it to pop. And as you said, this Jets defense has given up some yards. Maybe this is a chance for Ken Walker to really get going.
Yeah, in his post-game interview, he said, look, I don't really care how I get yards as long as we're getting yards. But, of course, they want to be able to run the ball. He is also the one, I love the leadership role that he's taking on.
Yeah.
Like he is mostly quiet, but he is becoming more vocal. He is the one that told the team on that 8-minute drive, we are going to run the ball and we're going to close this out. He was actually a little bit upset that they couldn't take more time off the clock on that one. But he's the one that said, yeah, let's go. Let's get it done. Let's keep pounding away at this one. So the mentality is there.
Yeah.
The play calls are there. I think sometimes it's moving bodies in front. I don't know. There's a lot.
Yeah.
When it is going well, it looks so easy.
It does.
You're like, why can't it look that easy
when
all the
teams
time?
are humming in the run game, you're like, wow, just do this all the time.
All the time. Just keep calling this play all the time.
Fortunately, it's not that easy in this league.
No, it is not. The Seahawks Insiders podcast is broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio, presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks, who are a perfect 8-0 at MetLife Stadium.
6-0.
6-0. I was trying to give them 2 extra wins.
Hey,
Sorry, there's too many numbers in my head right now.
They're 4-0 against the Giants. They are 1-0 against the Jets. And Seahawks fans might remember the sixth game there. They played the Broncos.
It was a pretty fun one.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game.
It was a fun one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we wanted to get another win at that stadium, what would we need to do? Give me your 2 things.
Well, we just talked about the run game. I want to see it get going. Doesn't need to be some dominant, we don't need Saquon Barkley rushing for 255 yards. I'll take it if they do that.
That would be great.
I want to just see, let's get the average up. So it's those first down negative 1 yard, 0 negative plays. Get rid of those. Just get the 4 or 5 yards on first down. So let's call it an 80+ yard game for Ken Walker. I think that's more than enough to get you going where you want. And then defensively, I want to see more of these turnovers, which I know comes from, stopping them on first down, the pass rush, getting going, all that. But however the formula is, I want to see, because that's kind of the one thing Mike McDonald's pointing to is this defense is doing a lot well, but what's the next step? Let's have a 3 turnover game.
I was going to go with getting to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, which, I think those go hand in hand.
Well, you got a couple of Seahawks defenders who have played a lot of games in the stadium, so maybe it all starts coming back to them. And
Leo's got some good memories there.
Julian would have a few good memories on that one. Yeah.
Hank, right? Didn't Hank play there too?
Hank would have had, yeah. There's make it a special kind of homecoming.
Let's do it.
How about that?
Yes.
And I'm going to echo your part on the run game, but I want to see as a team over 100 rushing yards.
Sounds good.
That's what I got. We're not going to overcomplicate things this week. We're just gonna let that roll because the Seahawks are going to play 4 of their remaining 6 regular season games on the road. You just need to come away with a win in this one.
Yep. Any way you can do it.
Any way you can do it. That's generally our philosophy here on the podcast. And it is exactly what we're going to do next week, because that is the next time we will join you on the Seahawks
if there's power.
Insiders. Our asterisk always on the Seahawks Insiders podcast.